Hare Krishna. I wish to sincerely offer my gratitude to each and every one of you for coming today to Sri Radha Gopinath Mandir. My special thankfulness to Yadubar Prabhu for his divine association and wonderful kirtan. A few days ago, I received a telephone call from His Holiness Niranjan Swami Maharaj. He told me that the biggest festival of the year in the country of Ukraine takes place in Odessa, very famous historical city. I believe 3,000 or 4,000 people assemble from all over the country. Yes? How many? Thousands of people. Ukraine is one of the most successful nations in the world for the spreading of Krishna consciousness. In this country, which previously was the Soviet Union, it was always a separate country, but very much under the Russian control during the communist times. Niranjan Maharaj was fearlessly risking his life going to Ukraine even then, during communism. And after the doors of the nation opened to the free world, he became GBC and the most wonderful leader. Under him is Achyutapriya Prabhu, who is regional secretary of the entire nation. There's about 50 centers in the country of Ukraine. Thousands of devotees who are committing their lives. With their own hands, they built a beautiful temple in Kiev, the capital. It's quite amazing. Last year doing Punya Yatra, we saw Essay and Soul and Yadubar Prabhu made that wonderful documentary about the festival in Odessa and the history of the preaching in Ukraine. So Niranjan Swami just came from that festival, and he told me the grand finale of the festival was when everyone came together for a kirtan where thousands and thousands of people were dancing and dancing and dancing and crying out the holy name in great joy. It lasted for many hours. And the personality who led that kirtan was the illustrious Yadubar Prabhu. Hare Krishna. The association of devotees has the power to transform a person's heart. That is why Srimad Bhagavatam declares that elevation to heavenly planets, liberation, mystic cities, all these things are very insignificant and pale in value compared to one moment's association with a sincere devotee of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami that even a moment's association of a great devotee is the most precious thing that can possibly be achieved, because it can open the doors to the perfection of liberation. Little Prahlad, 5-year-old devotee, he was in a society of envious, greedy demons. But just by his little association, all the classmates in the school, they were transformed. We're performing Hari Kirtan, Hari Kirtan together. Such is the power of one sincere devotee, even when he was totally outnumbered by an entire civilization of asuras. Krishna consciousness is about the transformation of the heart. That takes place according to the choices we make and the association that we keep. But we should understand what it means to associate with devotees. It really means to be in the spirit of hearing and chanting together, carrying out the will of Krishna together in a spirit of service. That is what association of devotee is about. Krishna tells in Gita that there is divine and demonic natures within the human society. Previously, in previous yugas, the devotees and the demons were in different universes. And then as things degraded, the devotees and the demons were in different planets. But in Kali Yuga, especially, devotees and demons are in the same heart, of the same body, of the same person. Krishna tells us we must conquer the lower self with the higher self. The dualities are so powerful in this age of Kali. Happiness, distress, honor, dishonor, honesty, dishonesty, truthfulness, untruthfulness, pleasure, pain, success, failure, victory, defeat, heat, cold, up, down, right, left. Everywhere is dualities. But especially the divine and the demoniac. Humility, egotism, lust, self-control, envy, forgiveness, anger, compassion. These are all dualities. And they are both residing simultaneous in the heart of a conditioned soul. Krishna consciousness, or real spiritual life, is about overcoming the lower nature with our higher nature. The Native American Indians explained the same principle that is so elaborately revealed in Bhagavad Gita in very simple, basic analogy. which does strike the heart. They explain that within every human being, there are two dogs that are fighting with each other. There is a good dog and a bad dog. And they are fighting. Who will win the fight? Whichever dog is given the most food. That is the free will of a human being. This is our God-given nature. Something that distinguishes the human being from the lower species. We have free will. We can make a choice at every moment. And really what our choice is, are we going to feed nourishment to the bad dog or the good dog? To the demoniac or the divine? We feed that which we give the most of our energy to. Dhyayato Vishayan Pungsang. Krishna explains in Gita, when one contemplates the objects of the senses, one develops attachment. This is a law. If you contemplate the objects of the senses, you will become attached. From attachment, lust, kama, arises. When that lust is frustrated, which it will be, in due course, krodha, anger. From anger, delusion. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. When the memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, we engage in abominable activities and fall down again into the material pool. The nature of the mind is thinking, feeling, and willing. We also have power of speech and power of action. So through our words, our deeds, and our thoughts, at every moment we have the choice of whether we're going to give strength and power to our lower nature or higher nature. And according to the choices that we make at every moment, that is what is going to determine the state of our consciousness. That is going to be who we are and where we're going. So yes, due to so many conditionings, sometimes loving, compassionate thoughts that are full of virtue just arise from our subconsciousness into our consciousness. And at other times, evil thoughts, envious thoughts, egoistic, lusty thoughts, they arise from the subconsciousness to the stratum of our perception. Which are we going to give attention to? Bhagavad Gita explains that there's no question of yoga without control of the mind and the senses. The mind is so difficult to control. We were discussing this last night. Arjuna tells that it is more controlled than more difficult to control than the raging wind. Now, for those of you who are up to date with the current news of the world, mass hurricanes. On August 29th, Hurricane Katrina. It was just a very minor hurricane in Florida. Didn't really do much damage. But then when it touched the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, just expanded into a deadly, earth-shaking monster of a wind. Hare Krishna. And when they saw that it was coming with such ferociousness, what did the President of the United States, the Governor of Louisiana, Mississippi, did they shoot their bombs? Did they send their military? All they could do was say, evacuate. Get out. Yes? According to, usually when you go to the bathroom, that's what you do, you evacuate. Sorry, such reaction I'm getting. So in the same way, just get out. Run for your life. There's no hope. And such devastation. 80% of one of the most important cities of America, 80% was underwater, up to 20 feet. The plumbing, the sewage, the electricity, the telephone lines, everything finished. And people were so deprived, people were starving. So many people got guns and they were shooting at each other and they were robbing stores, breaking into places, just pilfering people's homes, raping people. People were going mad with frustration, depression, and desperation. You could really see the caliber of people's consciousness when they're in desperation. Some people, when they're in desperation, they turn to God and they humble themselves and say, "My Lord, save me," and cry out His holy name with great devotion. Other people in desperation, they just become very silent and just, pray. Others become depressed. Others risk their lives to try to help other people. And other people, they just become utterly demoniac. They rob, they steal, they kill, anything for survival. And others take advantage of it. It's a time to get rich. People are vulnerable. So yes, many things are revealed when people are in desperate conditions. So it was a desperate situation. And with $60 billion of insured losses. What to speak of uninsured? $60 billion is what insurance companies have to pay for insured property that was destroyed. Powerful disaster. 1,000 people killed. Very sad. Very, very sad. And in our temple in New Orleans, they were cut off from the world. They had no capacity to give any signal or message to anyone. The postal system was finished. The telephone system was finished. There's no emails because there's no electricity, nothing. But finally, somehow or other, they got one phone call through. I don't know how they do it, to the temple in Dallas, and told the condition they're in. The deities and 19 devotees, installed deities, 19 devotees, were trapped in this house. They couldn't go anywhere. Surrounded by looting, violence, shooting, raping. Surrounded by deep water, levees broken. There was no plumbing, no sewage, no electricity, no gas. They ran out of food. It's very difficult. 19 people living in a house in that condition. So the devotees, previously, they volunteered to help the government, but the government didn't want any help in helping people. So they concentrated their energy to let us save the devotees from this horrible predicament. They had a meeting from 7 at night till 3 in the morning and decided we're going to New Orleans and we're going to rescue the devotees and the deities. Very dangerous. Because no one was allowed in the city. Everyone was leaving the city. No one was going to the city. The roads were blocked coming in and open going out because it was so dangerous. There was so much violence. It was like a jungle of violence. And so much disease and strife and poverty. It's horrible. They had to pass through 40 checkpoints where they were stopped at roadblocks in the road. And somehow they convinced everyone to let them go. They had an 18-wheel truck in a van. And hours and hours and hours, Krishna somehow or other got them through. And as they were on the highway, they saw thousands and thousands of people just walking out of New Orleans, just stranded on the highway. They were just walking for days, begging people for rides. People were starving. People were sick. It's a pitiable state. This is the United States of America. Last week, Hare Krishna. 1,000 dead. Hundreds and thousands homeless in a prominent city. And finally they got to the city limits and they were stopped for hours and hours and hours, and somehow or other they convinced the government, the military, to let them in. And as they were going through the city, they just saw dead bodies and they saw so much violence, and they saw people in totally desperate conditions, trapped. They had no way out. It was very sad. And they were trying to get to the temple. But yet, on the way, there were trees blown down, blocking the road, or there was roadblocks, or there was big floods. So they were just zigzagging all over the city, hour after hour after hour. They happened to have one devotee who was with them by Krishna's mercy, who previously was a taxi driver in New Orleans. So he knew the roads. And finally they got to the temple. And when they got to the temple, there were military helicopters everywhere, and they were thinking they were going to take their truck away from them. So they had to do it immediately, otherwise, because they weren't supposed to be in the city. Everyone going out, they're going in. Very difficult. So somehow they brought all the deities and put them in nice boxes with cushions from Dallas, and they brought all the devotees and came back to Dallas with great difficulty. The devotees were practically starving. And when they arrived at Dallas, which was hundreds and hundreds of miles away, the Dallas devotees greeted them with kirtan. All the devotees were so happy. And off the truck comes Srila Prabhupada's murti. Then beautiful marble deities of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya. Then large beautiful deities of Baladev, Subhadra, Jagannath. And then the presiding deities, Radharani and Radhakanta, Sri Sri Radha Radhakanta. And the devotees cooked a big feast. So everyone was very happy. Very difficult strife. Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. Danger at every step. And the city of New Orleans, so much trying to just put things together. They spent millions and millions of dollars working hard, military and all kinds of philanthropic agencies trying to resurrect the city, trying to make it all right again. And yesterday, another hurricane, Rita. She struck Texas, but she came close enough to New Orleans where the winds from the outside of the hurricane broke the levees again and put the city again underwater. And the person in charge of the city said, we are back to square one as far as fixing the damage. So much loss, so difficult, big problems. But yet Arjuna tells that to control the mind is more difficult than controlling the wind. And this is just a small sample of power of the wind. The most powerful, wealthy country in the world was helpless when this wind came crashing to them. So what is our hope of controlling the mind? And Krishna tells in Gita, by constant practice and detachment, it could be done. And what is that constant practice and detachment? Manmanabhava madbhakto. To fix our consciousness on Krishna. Because Krishna is the controller of all controllers. Tumi sarveshwareshwara brajendra kumara. The son of Nanda Maharaj is the controller of all controllers. He is Ishvara Parama, the supreme. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. The whole material energy is working under his direction.